We are moving from I to we.
Mm-hmm.
These issues that I addressed are we issues in terms of solutions. I can't solve it. We solve it by saying, look, what difference can I make? I'm just this guy from Hamilton, Ontario, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
7.8 billion people say, I can't make a difference. Guess what? We can't make a difference. But if you say, I am making a difference, and a tiny one, a tiny, tiny, tiny one, then you're in, and others begin, and the momentum begins. And I'm telling you, this is more than just a good idea.
Welcome to the Legacy in the Making show. I'm your host, LA's foremost success coach, Toni Marie Torrey. I interview leaders and influencers who've gone beyond the superficial markers of success and claimed true fulfillment by leveraging their positions to create positive and profitable changes in their businesses and beyond. They share their stories and offer real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience that translates into practical advice to apply to your own journey. I invite you to this injection of wisdom and inspiration so you can prevail and leave your own lasting legacy. Hello and welcome to the Legacy in the Making show. Today I have such a special guest for you. Martin Rutte is president of Livelihood, which is a management consulting firm in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The company's areas of service include strategic vision, corporate spirit, performance management, and creative leadership. So anyone who wants to step more into their power as a leader, listen up today. He has so many accomplishments. I had to whittle it down. So this doesn't even reflect how amazing this man really is. But here are a few things you need to know about him. He is the co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work. And that sold over 1 million copies. For 15 years, he's been exploring people's vision for the kind of world they deeply long for, which is reflected in his book, Project Heaven on Earth, the 3 simple questions that will help you change the world. And he has worked with all sorts of big business names, including Sony Pictures, Southern California Edison, Virgin Records, Apple, just to name a few. He is a big deal. He was also the very first Canadian to address the Corporate Leadership and Ethics Forum at Harvard Business School. And not only that, but he was their keynote speaker 4 years in a row. This is how influential and insightful this man is, that he is recognized by some of the best, and they want to keep on listening to him. So listen up. He's also a member of the Transformational Leadership Council and was a recipient of the Excellence in Leadership Award. Martin, I am so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Toni Marie, thank you. Pleasure to be with you and people watching. Thank you very much.
I'd love to hear a small part of your backstory. How is it that you came to be such an accomplished leader?
Well, it started in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is like Pittsburgh. It's a steel city where great visions were never part of normal life. And I had a thought when I was about 12 years old, I'm here to change the world. And it didn't strike me as odd. It didn't strike me as abnormal. Nobody I knew had ever said anything like that. I just knew it. And so from there, university and psychology, and then started my own business in Toronto, leading personal development courses. And then people said, won't you come in and talk to us about vision and about achieving beyond what you believe possible? So I started doing consulting. I started doing speaking. That led to Harvard. The Harvard story is interesting. There was a woman, one of the courses that I took, who said, when we were talking about beyond belief objectives and goals, she said, well, I want to go to Harvard, to the business school. I said, yeah, so? And she said, yeah, but I'm Canadian, I'm a girl, I'm blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what's that got to do with anything? What do you need to do to get into Harvard? And she said, well, I need to apply. I said, okay, so by when will you apply? And she did. And she got in. And she phoned me, jumping off the ceiling. What can I do for you? And this thought came to my mind. Oh, I'd love to speak at the Harvard Business School. So she said, all right, I'll set it up for you. And oh my God, all right. And I still remember the first time going in there. I felt like a baseball player going into the Yankee dressing room, for the first time. I was like, oh my God, this is Harvard. And you got it. I mean, they play at a very, very high level. So that led to a lot of work on spirituality and work. I helped to start that conversation in the world. That led, as you mentioned in the introduction, to Chicken Soup for the Soul at work, and then to my most recent work called Project Heaven on Earth. So that's a pretty good overview.
That's you in a nutshell, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it's a very impressive overview. And from a guy who came from a small industrial, or maybe not so small, but just from an industrial town where, like you said, culturally, it wasn't really the norm to have these thoughts and visions that you have. So it sounds like you've been very divinely driven and very on purpose in your life. And
that's true. Both statements are actually quite precise. True. Yeah.
Yes. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the work that you do in the world is that I think you and I hold the same belief in that I think that how we are going to change the world for the better is really through the forum of business. And it's one of the places where we can create the most impact and most positive change. So I love that you're so involved in that dialogue. Can you give us an example of a time when you started out working with a company or an organization and they were, in position A and their transformation and movement to position B and the possible results that were created in the world from that?
Well, let me go back to, I want to answer that, but I want to answer one other thing you said. The reason that I was interested in business was because business has the temporal power in the world today. And so I thought if we could transform business, we could transform the world. Because one of the things that business is deeply interested in is, does this work or not? And that's the metric that they go against. And I loved that. When I began, I was interested in social workers. I thought they would do it. And then it very quickly became evident to me that no, business is the path forward. Southern California Edison, which is the big power company in Southern California, I think it's 17,000 people or something. When I was working with them as a consultant, they were going from a regulated monopoly, which means all they had to do was make sure that the power went on every day, to an unregulated business, not even monopoly. And the pressure on them was because their cost per kilowatt hour of electricity was much higher than the surrounding states where it was not a monopoly. And so business put this tremendous pressure on the company, on Southern California Edison, to do something about that. So the vice president at the time who called me in said, look, we've got to do something different here because it has been mostly about reliability. I come in, I flick the switch on, the electricity is there. Now it's going to be about cost. Reliability is very conservative. You've got to just tick off the boxes, everything. But cost, you have to drive costs down. You have to increase your profitability. And so he brought me in to work with different divisions on their vision. And I developed this process where I would interview each member of the executive team separately for literally half a day. In essence, I would ask 3 questions. Where are you today? Your division in the company. Do you want to be? What's your vision? And give me some of the key strategic objectives that will get you there. I wrote that up, gave each person a copy, and then we did this 3-day offsite where we focused on each of those 3 domains. Where are we? Where do we want to be? And how are we going to get there? And of course, we had team building exercises as well. So the team came together. And what was unique about the process that I discovered was that it wasn't about me telling them, because after you interview the entire team, you know what the issues are. But that's me telling them, not as effective as them discovering it for themselves. And so the process allowed what I call the collective wisdom in the room to be apparent to everybody in the room. And once they saw that, then it was obvious what they needed to do. So productivity went up, costs went down, profitability went up, and it was the mindset that was really the issue. And I think that's what's going on in business today with respect to COVID, that COVID has shut down a lot of possibility. And some of the people that I've been speaking to recently are beginning to think, okay, post-COVID, what are we going to do? We need a new mindset. And that mindset is about a new story. It is about achieving beyond what you believe possible, rather than just what you believe possible. And in terms of my new work, it's like, what's heaven on earth for our company? That's a very profound question.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it seems that really those questions that you are answering and asking back in the day for Southern California Edison are a natural part of the evolution of the work that it is that you're doing now, because the principles are kind of essentially the same. It's like, where are we? Where do we need to go? And how do we get there? And there's such powerful questions.
Let me then move into what heaven on earth is. So what came out of all that work on vision was, what's my vision for the kind of world I want? And when I had that thought, what popped into my mind was, well, ultimately, I'd like heaven on earth. And I can remember my first thought was, oh my God, you can't say that. And then I thought, why not? I can talk to you about hell on earth, can't I? That's a permissible conversation. Why can't I talk to you about the deep desire that you have for the kind of life and work and nation and world that you deeply long for? And so thus we're born, and I'd love to do them with you. Are you willing to jump in?
I am so willing to do these questions with you.
All right. And for you, the listener and watcher right now, please answer the questions as well. So these are the 3 heaven on earth questions, and they form the basis of my book, Project Heaven on Earth. So question 1, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on?
I think one of the most profound experiences I've ever had, and I've been fortunate to experience it multiple times, is snorkeling in Hawaii. Like, for me, that is just such a profound experience of appreciating connection with nature, beauty, sharing that experience with people that I love and adore, and, being surprised and amazed by the diversity of life.
Lovely. All right. Second question. Imagine you have a magic wand, and with this magic wand, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you?
For me, heaven on earth is all people empowered to live on purpose, to be in alignment with sharing their gifts in the world in a way that allows them to be of service to others or to an important cause, so that, I think what comes up for me right now is this idea of generosity, so that we can all live with compassion and generosity towards ourselves, towards the planet, towards all sentient beings.
Very clear. And then the third question, what simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours to have more of that?
I have a conversation coming up with my virtual assistant. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is get her more aligned with what it is that she wants to create in the world, so that she can take action in a way that is less about going through the motions and more about really being a contributor.
Very clear. So let's go through the questions again. Question 1, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on? Bang, you went right to snorkeling in Hawaii. What you did not do is ask me, what do you mean by heaven on earth?
No, you didn't. I didn't need to.
99.9% of people do not ask me what I mean by heaven on earth. That's fascinating to me. And if they do ask, I just say, I'm not going to tell you. You tell you. So you know what heaven on earth is. It's what I call an already knowing within you. And so when I recall a time you experienced heaven on earth, you go right to the time I snorkeled. But how do you know it? Because I didn't even define what I meant, but you know. That's the point. The second question, here's a magic wand, and with it you can have heaven on earth. The reason for the magic wand is to remove the necessity of you having to know how you're going to create it. So if you don't have to know how, you can go strictly and deeply and purely into the what, and which you did. People living on purpose, people living with compassion, people living with from generosity. Very clearly, you know what it is. And then the third question, what simple, easy act will you take in the next 24 hours to have more of that? I'm going to have this call with my VA to clean it up with her so she gets more on purpose. So whatever that third action is, whether it's a new action or an action that you are already doing, by adding the consciousness, and this is my contribution to heaven on earth to it, then you've begun. You've stepped into the arena. You are at a higher level co-creating the new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. And that's what this work is about. It's not about we need a new story. That isn't sufficient. If I keep saying to you, our relationship's not working, we need a new relationship, we need a relationship, we need a new story for our relationship, but neither of us names it, it's frustration. But if I say to you, we are working together on having a heaven on earth relationship, we are working together to co-create heaven on earth for humanity, in order for humanity to truly experience its greatness. That is, we're at the fork in the road now. We've got the pandemic, we've got the environment, we've got nuclear weapons. These are potentially, God forbid, annihilation of all humanity. We've got to take a new road. Project Heaven on Earth is my contribution and many others' contribution to that.
I think one of the points that you're making there that is so important, that speaks volumes to me, is this concept of co-creation. And for me, that triggers two thoughts. Firstly, I don't have to do it all on my own. I think oftentimes what happens is that the problem feels too big for the individual, and then people go into non-action rather than even taking the tiny steps. And then the other piece that I really loved about that is that it helps me realize that I only need to take tiny steps in that direction, because it's not all on my shoulders. It's on humanity's shoulders.
Very
and
well.
All of us have the opportunity to contribute.
We are moving from I to we.
Mm-hmm.
These issues that I addressed are we issues in terms of solutions. I can't solve it. We solve it. And yes, by saying, look, the threat of nuclear weapons is so big, it's so enormous. What difference can I make? I'm just this guy from Hamilton, Ontario, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
7.8 billion people say, I can't make a difference. Guess what? We can't make a difference. But if you say, I am making a difference, and a tiny one, a tiny, tiny, tiny one, then you're in, and others begin, and the momentum begins. And I'm telling you, this is more than just a good idea. Tony Marie, if you go to Google and put in the phrase heaven on earth in quotes, 2020, you'll get about 4.35 million hits.
Wow.
If you go and put in heaven on earth in quotes 2021, you'll get 13 million hits. We're up about over three times the entirety of last. So something massive is going on in culture underneath the tumultuous surface. In the depths, the consciousness of humanity is going, wait a minute, we can't go down this road. We got to go down this road. And now's the time to do that.
And I do genuinely believe that creates momentum. I believe it shifts things in the, what I would call the morphogenetic field of humanity, of our future. So that's fantastic.
Can I give you some examples of what people are doing?
I would love some examples, and
go ahead. Sorry, yeah.
I'd also like to raise with you something that happened to me as we went through these questions, partly because I think it's something that's likely to happen for other people as well. So as I answered the second question, all people living on purpose, bringing their gifts and values into service to, other people and worthy causes in the world. There was a part of me that went, well, firstly, how is that even possible? And secondly, if we actually solved that problem, then what causes would we have to solve and serve in the world? Like if everyone's already living on purpose. And so to some extent, that was kind of like a resistance to the idea. And I'd love it if, I'm sure I'm not the first person who has had kind of like a gotcha come up. So I'd love it if you can speak to that piece. And then, of course, the examples afterwards.
Sure.
Fantastic.
Sure. This has come up several times when people say, but look, if there's no hunger, there's no war, there's no poverty, there's no illness in the world, well, there'd be nothing left to do. And I go, but wait. Think about what you're saying for a moment. In essence, what you're saying is, I want those deep sufferings to continue so that I don't have to face the unknown. No, let's get rid of all these. Let's end these sufferings. And more people are actually doing work on ending a suffering. And then let's look at what's next. I have no idea what's next. Let's find out. So that's my answer.
And it brings to mind, to me, the concept of the empowerment dynamic versus the drama triangle. And it's the difference between focusing on what you want to create or focusing on the problem. And focusing on the problem creates the drama. And focusing on what you want to create creates the empowerment. It's so interesting because I work on this a lot myself, and I work on it a lot with my clients, and yet still, and thank you for reflecting that back to me, because that gives me like great insight just into myself in terms of going, oh, okay, it still comes up. Let's train the brain
Good.
to be more in alignment with what I want to create and less concern about the problem. So thank you for sharing that wisdom. It's always great to be reminded. Just as soon as we think we've learned a lesson, it oftentimes comes back up again.
Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to even bring it up. So some examples. Well, let's start really simple. A woman in Hawaii who put her definition of heaven on earth embedded at the end of every email. Simple act. Every time an email goes out, and then a woman in Chile saw that and went, wait a minute. So the woman in Chile spoke to the woman in Hawaii. So now the woman in Hawaii puts, imagine you have a magic wand, and with it you can have heaven on earth. What is heaven on earth for you? And then she puts, for me, it is, and in essence, for her, it's returning to the Garden of Eden. And now she asked the specific second question. The question is not, what is heaven on earth for you? Or what is heaven on earth? That's too big an initial question. The first question is always, recall a time you experienced heaven on earth. Then the second question is, with a magic wand, what is heaven on earth? Makes it much easier. So then we move to a police officer who's created a 16-page manual called Heaven on Earth for Law Enforcement, which is,
wow.
Because I asked him, Justin, what's heaven on earth for law enforcement? And he said, oh, easy, the end of crime and people working together. Just like that, he got it. It was amazing. A real estate agent who's created a program called A Home for Everyone, where each of the agents in her office, she's asked them, they've agreed, donate $100 off each commission check for a building or a home that they sell, up to a max of $1,200 a year. They've raised $400,000 over about 6 or 7 years. And the program is called A Home for Everyone. And they ask individuals and organizations from the community to submit applications for that money. A woman who was deeply concerned with violence against women, deeply. And she was really mad at me. I've been to the police. I've been to the government. Nothing. What would you do? And I said, well, Susan, I don't know your financial situation. You could donate a penny. You could donate $5,000. Well, what difference would a penny make? One of the other women on the call said, wait a minute. What if everybody in your county donated a penny a day to help end violence against women? She went, oh my God. Her group, I think it's called Second Story, started a program in which they handed out mason jars with a picture of a woman, half her face bruised, black, beaten up, half her face bright, alive with the light shining. And the program was called Making Change. They asked everybody to donate a penny or more a day for a year. They raised $2,500 doing that. This was in Canada, they took it to the government of Canada, who gave them $100,000 for each of the subsequent 3 years. And now she says to me, anywhere I go in the county, people's first question is, what can I do? All the way up to a woman in Austria, Elizabeth, whose Heaven on Earth project is, Austria is a heaven on earth nation. And I went, wow, where did you come up with that? And she said, well, Martin, it's because it's simple. She taught me the value of the word simple. I don't know what your simple is, but you do. All the way up to a man, Charles Choré, originally from Gabon, now in Montreal, who started a Facebook group called Africa, a heaven on earth continent. Wow. Stunning. A newspaper in Dehradun, India, called the Dehradun Street, that put on its masthead in capital letters, it's published every week now, Dehradun, a heaven on earth city. So every week people see that. It's seeded, it becomes the norm.
There's so much power in collective effort, not only in terms of the actual initiatives, but also just in terms of the support that you're showing that people provide each other in the brainstorming and the creation part of the process.
Yep.
As I demonstrated myself, it seems that others have had to deal with those kind of obstacles as well. Like your lady that was really angry and that you asked her, like, you don't have to solve this entire problem. Maybe all you have to do is donate a penny.
You have no idea of the impact that your contribution can make. One woman in Mexico City goes and smiles at 2 people a day. That's it. Now, here's what's interesting. If each of those people smile at 2 people, and each of those people smile at 2 people, and so on and so on, let's say your only job is to smile at 2 people who have never been smiled at before. How long would it take to cover the entire 7.8 billion people in the world? Do you know how much time it would take? Take a guess.
I have no idea, but it's making me laugh just thinking about it because you sound like a multi-level marketer right now. But we're marketing smiles. It's awesome.
Well, it takes 32 days.
Wow, is that all?
That's all.
That is incredible. And I do have to say, there have been times in my life when I've been struggling and the smile from a stranger has absolutely made the difference.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know where the angel is. Right. It's so really think of Project Heaven on Earth as a piece of software, metaphorical software. And any new software that you download and boot up, in essence, what it says to you is, look, here's a new possibility that you never thought of. But I can't go any further until you put your unique content in. That's what Project Heaven on Earth is. It's saying, the possibility of heaven on earth? That thing that your soul, that your divine essence has been longing for? Well, guess what? Now is the time. What is going to be your simple, easy, concrete contribution in the next 24 hours? Unleashing that, Tony Marie, is stunning.
That is so powerful. Martin, if you were, like, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are founding CEOs and financial professionals, mostly because they're the folks that I work with, and so they're my audience. What would you say to these folks who are looking to apply these principles to business? Now, obviously, you've shared with us already some really great examples of questions that you can ask from your Southern California Edison days and the heaven on earth questions as well. Is there any other insight that you would like to share with this audience that you think is important for them to know?
For people in business, I would add a 4th heaven on earth question. So the first question is, recall a time you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on? The second question is, imagine you have a magic wand and with it you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth? And the third question is, using the same magic wand, what's heaven on earth for your business? And then the fourth question is, what simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours? What that will do, see, the purpose of the magic wand is to remove the necessity of having to know how. Mm-hmm. Business people are generally very driven by, I need to know how I'm going to do something in order to do it. Not here. I only want you to focus on what. Go purely into the what. Let the magic wand do the how. Then, after you know the depth of the what and the clarity and the precision of the what, then you can look at the how. And so I've been talking more and more about this within business, that it's about creating the new story about your business. It's about creating objectives and goals and achievements that are beyond what you believe possible. Let me explain that a little bit more. Most people think that in order for you to do something, you have to believe that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
In order for me to
common misunderstanding.
Right. And so where that leads is, then the only thing you will achieve is what you believe you can achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So simple example. Last year, my company made $100. This year we go through a planning process. We're going to add 15%. So our goal for this year is $115. Okay. But $115 is still 100. It's from the same thinking. What if you went out and said, okay, heaven on earth for me is $500? Well, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Listen to the language. I don't know how to do it. I know you don't know how to do it. That's part of the vision. You're not supposed to know how to do it. When John F. Kennedy said a man on the moon in 10 years, the US Space Administration did not have the stuff that would prevent the burning up of the capsule when it returned. There's new hows that can be discovered, but you need to answer the question, what's the what? And in this case, I'm saying, what's heaven on earth? That's the what.
One of the things that I would add to what you're saying too, that I find is interesting, that I see my clients doing a lot before we, change the process, is putting a limitation on it. People do it especially with dollars. So I would say, it's like, what if I made $500 or more? Because
very good,
especially with money, people tend to kind of just put this kind of finite cap on it. But maybe that's just where we start, and there's an even bigger possibility to embrace as well.
I love it. A minimum of 500.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant. No, very good. Very good. Yeah. So that's then you see then what will instantly emerge is all the assumptions you have about how you create.
Mm-hmm.
All the assumptions you have about what creation is, what making something is about, and it will challenge that. And we want to challenge that. We want to have you look at, what do I think is impossible? Put the impossibility aside and then focus on producing that thing. Now, clearly, I'm not saying we're going to build a bridge between Los Angeles and Hong Kong tomorrow, in 24 hours. Not that big kind of capital I impossible, but something that you think is impossible, but that other people have done. So it's clearly not impossible.
Yes, and I think one of the best ways that you can knock the legs out from underneath a belief is to find examples that contradict your limiting beliefs. Seeing other people in the world who have done and created amazing things. So,
or you think of a Tesla, right?
Right.
Elon Musk. Sorry, he never went to that school. Very inspiring. Or Richard Branson, a Virgin.
Yes.
Or people who think so. It's not they think outside of the box. They throw the box out the window and make an entirely new box.
This is such a great conversation. I'm really enjoying it. I hesitate to put an end to it. We are starting to run out of time. And so I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to show people your book, tell people where they can find you, where they can participate with Project Heaven on Earth. So Martin, please, for those viewing, there it is. There's the book, Project Heaven on Earth.
Now, do you know there's another title embedded in the same title?
Well, I do, because you told me.
Project Heaven on Earth, right? Yes. It's Project Heaven on Earth and Project Heaven. So Project Heaven on Earth, the book is available on Amazon. And if you're a company, I'm asking you to buy one for everybody in the company, everybody in your division, everybody in the company. Put this mindset into the space. Put this mindset into people's thinking that, oh, heaven on earth, let me start thinking about what that could be. That will open up an entirely new sense of momentum for you. And now's the time. We got to start thinking about post-pandemic. Also, you can go to projectheavenonearth.com and sign up for my free course, a free weekly blog, which will give you different perspectives on heaven on earth. And write me. You can go to Project Heaven on Earth and contact me there, or look for Martin Rutte, RUTTE.com, and you'll see more of my corporate stuff.
And I do have to say, Martin, you are an extremely accessible person for someone who has so many demands on your time and doing so many big things in the world. I love that you really do make yourself available to be of support to people. So, man, with a very generous heart and an amazing vision. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest here today on Legacy in the Making Show. I'm excited to spread the word and have lots of people listen to this conversation, because I know that it will change the world.
That's the idea, Tony Marie. I flash back to sitting on the porch in Hamilton years ago. So it was all about this, wasn't it? Thanks, Tony Marie.
Who knew?
Who knew?
That's awesome. I'm glad you tuned in to the Legacy in the Making Show. If you're genuinely interested in creating positive change in your business or your life, or on a more global scale, I invite you to connect with me at tonymarie.com. That's Tony with a Y, Marie with 2 E's. When you get there, you'll find the Path to Purpose Master Plan, the truly brilliant method to make sure you're clear on why you're here. This is the absolute critical foundation to honing your instincts and leaving a legacy you'll be proud of. You can also find out about the Innate Wisdom Business Council, which is an opportunity to evolve your vision in the company of like-minded leaders, and much, much more. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you next time.